I'm in Peru, so there should be.
Are we live?
Delay.
That's what the sign says.
Oh, okay. That's okay. We'll cut that in post. Welcome everybody to Dancing Dragons Live, your weekly Monday live performance where I make the same joke to start the performance every single week. Will's not a big fan. I think it's fantastic. Anyway, Dancing Dragons Live is Dancing Dragons Coaching Collective's weekly show where you get real talk from real coaches about real life problems. It's every Monday, 8:30 Eastern Time. And here we are going to be talking about ethical persuasion. So before we get into that topic and I throw it over to Will, I just want to say go to dancingdragons.cc. That stands for Coaching Collective, dancingdragons.cc. Check us out. If you're looking for life coaching or executive coaching, leadership coaching, any kind of coaching, tutoring, we have all different kinds of coaches. We have hundreds of coaches ready, suited for what you need and where you want to go to in life. So go to dancingdragons.cc. Check us out. Brand new Coaching Collective. So without further ado, over to you, Will.
Thank you very much, Elijah. I appreciate that. This is one of my favorite topics. And like you said earlier, I mean, we could go on for a long time. And I'm very excited because we have people that are, obviously, we have a great diverse array of life coaches here, but people that have different backgrounds. Deep has worked in documentary films. That's one way to persuade people. Rona has worked in television, marketing, sales, right? Alex, I can't even tell you his background because he's so cool. And Megan, we're going to unravel that mystery as we go upon. But I mean, think about it. You wake up every single morning and you look at your phone, right? And then you're going to get ads there, whether it be Facebook or dating app or it's just Google, right? And then you watch TV and there's ads there. There's ads on the highway. Everyone is trying to persuade you of something at every moment during the day. So we're going to talk about ethical persuasion versus unethical persuasion. We're going to go around and first define a couple things and get people's ideas on what ethical persuasion is. But why would you want to use this in the first place, right? Maybe you want to ace an interview. We have an episode about that earlier, so go check out that. And like Elijah said, dancingdragons.cc, dancingdragons.cc, dancingdragons.cc. I learned that from somebody that is not an ethical persuader, somebody named Edward Bernays. Maybe we'll delve into that a little bit later too. But maybe you're at work and you want to raise. Maybe you want your kids to do something. Maybe you're tired of going to the same bar with your bros and you want to convince them to go somewhere else. Winning over a guy or a girl. So there's a number of it'll help you become a good speaker as well, as I've obviously not doing because I've got way too many notes in front of me and a tablet open. But yeah, let's start with Rona because I'm curious about your perspective here because you have a unique background doing so many different things and it's built on persuading people. So yeah, what's your initial take on ethical persuasion? What does it mean to you?
First of all, I think everyone has a different definition of what's ethical. I think that's a wide berth, and I go from sales to everything else because everyone sells every day, and most people I know say, "I hate sales. I can't do it. I don't like it." Meanwhile, we do it in almost every conversation because we want what we want. What am I going to say? How am I going to say this to get buy-in from the other people? And ethical persuasion to me is what are you willing to say to get what you want? So how far are you willing to go? And it's not the same for everyone. You know, when I was in advertising sales back in the days of the covered wagons, you know, we had a very big expense number that we could
$2.
You know, spoil our buyers, and we took them to dinner. We took them to the movies. We went on day trips. You know, and is that ethical? Because it was a form of bribery. Yes, because it was TV and radio. They had to come back with the Nielsen and Arbitron numbers, and all they had to do was just buy a little bit more, just give us a certain share, and sometimes we never even talked about business. All we did was just go out. We went out and we played because it was about getting to know the people. People want to buy from people they know and people they like. Mm-hmm. So is that ethical? Do you have to get people to like them? Of course you do. You can have all the knowledge in the world, and if I don't like you, I'm not buying anything from you. So where is that line? Do you want to become best friends so that they throw a little bit more at you? Honestly, I used to do it all the time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And that's part of the thing that we offer at here at dancingdragons.cc is to be the best version of yourself. And like you said, every single day someone's either trying to persuade you or you're trying to persuade somebody. So why don't you be the best that you possibly can at it? And you bring up another point, which is like, what are ethics? Maybe we should say we're going to have to do a whole new show about that when we're live again every Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. So like, share, and subscribe, share the video. Deep, what's your take on this? Because you've been somebody that has been tasked with persuading people in a number of different ways. And you also, I'm sorry. But yeah, so, I mean, as a documentary filmmaker, what does that look like to you?
Well, first of all, just want to make, for the record, I'm not a filmmaker. I'm just privy to what was going on. That's all. I don't want to gloat something that I've not done before. Maybe in the future, but anyway. So I'm trying to unpack these two words: ethical, persuasion. Right. So for me to understand something, and I've not done any research intentionally because I wanted to go into this meeting, this session, with complete curiosity and with the information that I know. And the only information that I know are those two words, ethical and persuasion. So from my perspective, what do I think of those words? Well, persuasion is when you're trying to coerce someone into one line of thinking, idea. So that is persuading someone to make a decision away and out of the normal cycle that they typically will, right? I don't know what the Roman or what the Latin origin of the word is. I'll be curious to know what persuasion means by origin. But ethical, right? So let's unpack the word ethical, right? The word ethics have been used as political terms, economic terms, social terms. Ethical has been used as a social construct. They've been used when we compare oneself to another. So a country, a company, an individual might have ethics, an organization might have ethics. So they become terms to other, right? Ethics,
Deep,
which is from...
I'm going to have to interrupt you for 1 sec. I'm sorry, but you're sounding like a robot really bad. Could you maybe mute up and unmute and start again?
Yeah.
Do you have an external mic?
Yeah, no, but am I really that bad?
You're really bad at this point. So
you sound like the beginning of Iron Man by Black Sabbath.
Incorrect. He sounds like in the Matrix when Neo was swallowing that silver stuff.
Yeah, I can see that.
Hop out and just hop back in. We'll get to you. Okay, we'll get right back to you because I want to hear what you're saying because you were making some interesting points there, right? Elijah, I see you want to jump in here, Elijah. So go in and then.
Has it changed?
It's terrible right now, Dave. That's terrible. You're gonna need to jump out and come back in. Elijah, yeah, go ahead. I see you were chomping at the bit there, and then if you could throw us over to Megan too.
Yeah, sure. So, I think it is kind of interesting, right? So I feel like there's two problems here, right? So if you're going to look at ethical persuasion, there's two reasons why you might want to look at it. One is, I think, generally speaking, people think like, well, I don't want to be unethical, right? And so you look for things of like, how to not be unethical while you're persuading people. Because I feel like persuasion gets kind of like a bad rap, right? So that's where people's mind, they feel dirty when they're trying to convince somebody of something. And you should not. As Rona very eloquently pointed out, everything right now, I'm trying to persuade you that what I'm saying is true, right? So everything is persuasion. Everything in your life is negotiation, persuasion. You're always trying to convince somebody of something, right? And so effective persuasion is probably one of the most useful things that you can learn in life, and I would highly recommend it. Right now, it's true. You can be very unethical while trying to persuade somebody of something, right? And so first I want to kind of look at like, how can you avoid being unethical? I would say it really is like just one thing. Be honest and open. I guess that's two things. But you can put the and there, such conjunction. Yeah, it's kind of one thing. But anyway, be honest and open, right? So be fully honest with people. Don't hide information, right? It comes down to consent, right? That's how, like, if you're persuading somebody, everything comes down to consent, right? And they cannot make consent unless they're informed. And so if you're purposefully misleading them, or you're leaving out information that you know that they should have in order to make the best decision for themselves, that is important. Now, a lot of times when you look up this topic, you'll see things that I don't think are related at all. Like, people will be like, look for mutually beneficial it's no, that is not fine. If you want to do that, that's fine. I guess it's weird, right? You are not the other person. You have to in order to be truly ethical, you have to let the other person and give them their own autonomy. Let them make their own decisions. Do not think, well, what would they want, right? Like, sure, you can think that when strategizing on how to persuade them, what would they want? But it's in no way on you to make a decision of what's best for them. It's up for them. The only thing you need to do is be open and honest with them, right? And then that way they can make the best decision for them. In sales, we used to call this not to pitch, only pitch from your own, don't ever pitch from your own pocket, right? Because it's like, just because you wouldn't pay for this or something, that doesn't mean the other person isn't interested in paying for it, right? And so this is a huge holdup. So I know a lot of people are looking at it as like, well, how do I avoid being unethical? But I would say, like, learn ethical persuasion so you feel more comfortable when trying to persuade people. I think that that's going to be far more helpful to more people. Obviously, there are people that use persuasion for like the dark arts or something like that. You know, like they try like to mislead people and they try to scam people and stuff. That's obviously terrible. But I think most people have a hold up in the wrong direction. They're too careful about persuasion. Try to get comfortable with persuasion, and it's one of the most useful things that you'll learn in your entire life.
Yeah, Megan, what's your take on that? And what you're saying too, Elijah, kind of compounds upon what Rona was talking about, which is, I forget where that quote is from, but my mentor, Todd, taught me all about that. People do business with people that they like. And there's another part of that quote. Yeah, and it's really about being likable, right? And there's a number of ways that you can do that, but and also part of that is confidence too, right? If you approach a negotiation or a female and you're kind of timid and pussyfooting around the situation, they're going to feel that and they're not going to want to do business with you. So yeah, Coach Megan, we're just opening up the floor here. What's your take initially on persuasion, ethical persuasion, unethical persuasion? Your thoughts?
Well, first, I wanted to commend everyone on their comments. It was really interesting to hear everything with all of our different backgrounds. I think ethical persuasion seems like something big or scary, but it really is, like you guys said, something that is always prevalent in what we're doing. And it's always going to be something we can use to our advantage. But we really have to, again, make sure that we're being open and honest about it and being able to read the other person and see where they're coming from, and recognizing that if your presence is optimal and you can see that they're meeting you halfway, it really is just trying to be your best or optimal self with them and having them feel safe enough to come out and recognize that what you're doing is really just trying to help others, and essentially that's helping yourself. And so that's why I think it's really important when it comes to coaching and what we do here, because really we're just trying to help. And it's something that, again, it's gotten like a bad rep, or you see different examples of where it could be misconstrued. But really, if you have an idea of where you're going, and if you really believe in what you're saying and understand where the other person is coming from, it shouldn't be hard to find some middle ground.
Yeah, absolutely right. And this is exactly why, before we get to Rona, and then we're going to throw it over to Alex. Oh, actually, Deep joined. So
Deep
we're going to tease Alex. Alex is going to define the terms for us, right? Because a lot of time people spend countless hours talking about something and realizing the person you're talking to has a different definition of that word. So I think it's very important to define the terms. And so our cerebral assassin, Alex, we'll get to that. We're going to go to Rona, and then we'll go to Deep. And then this is part of the thing too, right? Is being genuine and being the best version of yourself. So great point there. Yeah, Rona, what's your thoughts?
So we were talking about honest persuasion, which can be an oxymoron if it's not done the correct way. I think the definition of persuasion is making somebody a little bit uncomfortable in terms of doing things that they may not want to do. And to Megan's point, that's part of what coaching is. We ask them questions so that they find their pain point on their own. We're not going to give it to them. I don't know what their life experience is. I have to be a little sneaky and ask them, well, how have you been feeling like this? Wouldn't it be nice to do this? And to allow them to come up with their own issues, and then it's their own aha moment. So that they do feel safer continuing, as to just what benefit selling. We, forgive the term, but I like it, vomiting up all this information and throwing it to other people when it may not make sense for them because you don't know what they need. Right?
Yeah.
So you have to ask questions. You have to have a little critical thinking skills in order to allow people to persuade themselves that they need coaching. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes the biggest favor you can do for somebody is persuade them to do something that is in their best interest, right?
Elijah, he was like, when I first met Elijah, he saw me on the side of the road with the will rap for food sign, right? And he was like, hey, get yourself together. Why don't you exercise a little bit? He was trying to influence me, and he did it. I didn't exercise, and I still will rap for food, but I'm not on the side of the highway. And
I heard him rap, and I was like, he has no future in this, so he has to do something else. Yeah,
but I can hit the Running Man like nobody's business. But I mean, and this is why it's so important. Before I throw to Deep, right? My idea of persuasion was, I was like, hey, there's some information that people don't know about. And I think if they know about it because they have empathy, they're going to take action, right? But my dumb butt was like, all right, I'm just going to memorize a bunch of facts, tell people the facts. Surely they will wake up and we'll have a peaceful world. And that didn't happen because people make decisions based on emotions. And that's why the Greeks studied rhetoric. And this is just like, you can have the best idea you want, but if you're not saying it in the right way, you're wasting your time. Deep, thank you. Welcome back. Let's see how your audio is. And if you could start over from the beginning, and when you were done, sir, if you could kindly pass it off to Coach Alex.
I think we got everything up until ethics.
Okay. You're right.
Well, first of all, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, perfect. You sound great.
Awesome. All right, well, I'll keep that in mind for next time. I think the last I remember that I was talking about those two words, right? Ethical persuasion and the flip side, or the whatever it is. So ethical persuasion, non-ethical persuasion, ethical non-persuasion, non-ethical non-persuasion. What do those things mean, right? So let's unpack those, right? Ethics and persuasion. I think there's two things, right? Persuasion is an action word, something that we're doing, and we're trying to get someone to basically change their course of action, something we're trying to persuade them new information, something they don't know, right? And then there's the direction of that action, which is ethical or non-ethical. So is the persuading we're doing ethical, or is it not ethical? Now that is a subjective matter. What are your ethics might not be someone else's, which means this subject is very complex. Do you understand what I'm saying now, right? So there's so many different layers to this, right? So let's unpack this a little bit more. An ethical persuasion situation might be as a drug intervention counselor. I'm trying to get somebody to stop taking some drug, and it's my ethical duty because I'm trying to protect their life, and it's my moral duty. I'm trying to empathize as them being human. So I would like to persuade them into a better course of action, right? Non-ethical persuasion would be, I'm trying to get a little kid to take drugs, right? So it's non-ethical. So I want to learn, what is ethical non-persuasion? Is that when, as a coach, And something I've learned from my partner, that a coach's job is to listen, right? So we're trying to actively listen. We're trying to be the best listeners we possibly can. I'm not great at it, right? But I'm trying to get better. So maybe the non-persuasion part could be, okay, so not saying stuff, right? Taking a step back as bystanders. Should we say stuff when we see bad things happen? Maybe that's how we should try to look at this kind of these two terminologies, right? Multi-directional, also very subjective. I have a a catalog of ethics that has been built up through my experiences, my books, other people's lives, right? And I form my ethical sense based upon my own knowledge and experiences, which means what I deem as ethical might not seem correct to any one of you. I think it's completely fine to sit with my, okay, well, I've got a group of 18-year-olds who like to smoke weed, so I think it's ethical and it's fine to smoke with them, right? But 99% of people, including parents, would think that's the most unethical thing you could possibly think of, and I should go to jail, right? So subjective, right? All right, that's me.
So anyway, deep. Real before we go to Alex. Sorry, Alex, to push you down the line again. I gotta get you on that deontology stuff, man. We gotta get a one-on-one going because this utilitarianism isn't gonna work for me. All right, go ahead, Alex.
Let's not branch off into ethics. We'll get into that. It's a whole other show, all right? But yeah, no, indeed, you bring up a great point because ethics are different to everybody, and that's part of the reason we're defining that. And let's start with those definitions. I'm upset that we're getting to Alex because he's got some great points right here. So
Yeah,
please continue.
it's all good. So we should be clear about our terms. We're talking about sales, negotiation, persuasion. I have a really good way to piece them apart. There are three different words for three different things. Starting with sales, sales is to secure a financial, like a transaction, typically dollars for goods, right, or goods for dollars. And that's sales. So sales, you're trying to actually do a transaction that would involve money. I mean, you can consider bartering could be sales, but you guys understand. So sales is definitely using persuasion and negotiations to secure that transaction. Whereas negotiation is kind of like signing a contract. So negotiation would be striking a deal. For example, we just signed contracts with coaches. It has promises in it, but with future transactions in mind, I guess. But negotiation would be like making a deal happen without necessarily making a transaction happen. And then persuasion is more, I guess, high level. It's really about changing someone's beliefs, behaviors, or feelings without necessarily trying to make a sale happen or trying to strike a deal per se. But persuasion will be definitely trying to change someone's mind, someone's behavior. So sales, negotiation, persuasion are, frankly, in my estimation, very similar. They all, when we talk about persuasion, we are talking about sales and we are talking about negotiation. In my opinion, they're all, let's just say for the sake of the argument, the same thing. When it comes to coaching and life coaching in this company and everything in life, there's a lot of sales and persuasion to do. We try, why do we persuade people? Why do we worry about this? And why do we worry about the ethics of persuasion? And it does get quite philosophical and political when you talk about this, and that's okay. We can go there. We can go into politics, guys. But it's really about serving, my needs, and hopefully when I serve my needs, you also benefit, and it's mutual, right? So there's a mutual benefit. When I persuade you to do a deal with me, we both can win out. That's the ideal. Obviously, it's less ideal if we both lose. I mean, I could persuade us to both jump off the bridge and we'd both be worse off, right? There were those, for example, what were those cults where everyone drank the Kool-Aid, right? I think like everyone drank it. Maybe
the Jones Plantation or whatever.
Jonestown.
Yeah. The cult leader was extremely persuasive. And I think the cult leader, pick your cult of choice. The cult leader drank it too, in theory. It'd be kind of funny if he didn't, but he drank it too, and they all went on to whatever the next world is. And so probably a double, a double loss.
But that was also brainwashing.
Well, that's what persuasion and brainwashing. Let's say,
which is an example of unethical persuasion.
Yeah.
Exactly. Perfect.
So to bridge to I'm going to pass off the mic to the next person in a second, but I would say to admit that some persuasion is unethical is to admit that people can be manipulated, and everyone can be manipulated. Everyone has been, everyone will be. And if you look up the definition of fraud and the definition of lying and the definition of manipulation, fraud, manipulation, lying are all very similar. Deceit. And I think most of unethical persuasion involves fraud, basically, which is involves lying or deceit or manipulation. So
I got a good question. I'm sorry. Did you have a?
No, I can let you take it.
Okay. All right. My bad. Yeah, I have a good question. So we all basically agreed that dishonesty is like a keystone in unethical persuasion, right? So at what point does embellishment become dishonest, right? Like, and again, you said we could talk about politics. Like, we're talking like Donald Trump style. Like, it was the best, the biggest, whatever it is, right? As certain, like Donald Trump, I think has like a decent argument to be like, well, this is just how he talks. So now everybody knows that he's like embellishing. So you could argue that's more ethical than some random person you don't know doing it.
It's
But
absolutely not. That word is on par with lying. When you embellish, means to embellish, elaborate, verbatim, anything that is any deviation from the truth is a lie.
But isn't embellishment though at least in most people's minds attached to a subjective thing, right? So it's like if you say if I say it's the most beautiful house you've ever seen, right?
That's a subjective truth. That's still the truth, but it's a subjective truth. It's my truth.
Right, so
it's their truth.
Yeah, but I would say that's probably embellishment.
Let's hold on one sec, guys. Let's hold on one sec, because Elijah posed the question, and I want to give it to Deep. And let's get these questions, because it's not just whether the embellishment, because you bring up a great point. That's subjective, Deep, right? So what's beautiful to one person may not be to another person. But then let's compound that. Let's go in reverse order. We'll start with Deep here. Then we'll go back to Alex, and then Megan, Elijah, Rona. But I think part of it is the intention. Well, not me personally, but some people say, what's the intention behind it? Like Elijah brought up earlier, if, I'm eating 40 Big Macs a day and Elijah's like, hey, buddy, let me try to persuade you not to do that. I think that's a good thing. But like you said, ethics is touchy, right? So yeah, Deep, what do you think? What do you think when it comes to ethical persuasion? Do you think there should be no embellishments, or do you think that you can embellish if you're Machiavellian and you're getting the best outcome for all people?
I would not deter to the Machiavellian thought to answer this question, because that strategy was used for different purposes, and definitely not a coaching strategy. I would say that there is the subjective and objective truth out there, and we can maybe unpack this a little bit. I would say that when you deviate, or when you use anything other than the truth, then it's not the truth, right? It can be something else, right? It can be an opinion, it can be a matter, it can be an idea, right? I think we've been using that word truth, and we've hurt that word so much, it's lost its power. Once that word meant something, and now you guys are attaching subjective, objective. Well, can it be used? Can it be bended? Can you add words to it? Can you structure it? Like, can you put a bow on it? No. Unfortunately, the truth is very painful, right? And that's why we got to leave it to do its work. The truth in its purest form, it's gonna do its job, right? It's when we try to sort of wield it. I would liken the pen or truth as, let's use the war term since we're on this subject, a sword, right? If it's anything else, then it's not a sword, right? So why don't we let truth be the truth and let it do its job? When we try to wield it, or when we change it, or we try to change its character, then it's not doing its job. And that's why we're seeing this country fall apart. Because when a person who should be speaking the truth, you're letting him say other things, right? And that's why it's a mess. if he was held to that high standard of only speaking the truth, then do you think that there would be such problems?
Yeah, and it's a great point. Let's throw it over to Alex too. And the next topic I want to get to, because you guys are like, all right, it's good to define the terms, and it's great to define these terms and say, okay, what's ethical, what's not, and these possibilities. But I'm sure people watching also want to know. So the next point we're going to get to is how can you actually, in some tips and tricks, ethically persuade somebody. But yeah, Elijah, you bring up a good point. Alex, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I was researching fraud and lying, and there was a Supreme Court case in 1948, never heard of it before, called Donaldson versus Reed Magazine. And the outcome of the Supreme Court case, was that the First Amendment does not protect against fraud, which is really interesting to me. I didn't expect it to protect against fraud. It's a matter of degree. But I'm about to Google, like, how could a life coach manipulate a client? How could our company manipulate our employees, and how to not do that, because we don't want a lawsuit. We don't want to do anything unethical, nor do we want to break the law. So being ethical versus unethical, there is shades of gray. You know what I mean? We have to self-advocate. You have to believe that, to a degree, that you being on earth and alive is better than the inverse. And to that degree, like, that may or may not be objectively true. I was a philosophy major, and the ethics is actually very fuzzy. It's very difficult to be objective about ethics. You can't make ethical claims that are objectively true. They're subjectively true, but you can lie. Lying and things like that can be you can say that was a lie, that was not a lie. But that's why we have court systems, because the court system ultimately arbitrates it, because it's not easily arbitrated. So, and sometimes the courts are wrong about cases, and there's a lot of, very interesting. But I don't want to go off too far off the rails of the conversation. But anyway, the point that I'm making is that I'll hand off the mic. I have so many thoughts that
I have a feeling that Rona has something to say.
Yes, Rona can go ahead.
Well, no, you were making one of my points, because I believe questions are the key to everything.
Okay.
The more information you have, the more. And I also don't like to use the word goals. I like to use the word target.
Why is that?
Goal is,
Why
I
is
want
that?
to be rich. What?
Why is that? Because we're defining terms. Why target over goal?
Because a goal is, I want to be rich. A target is, I want to make $10,473.12. It's just a little more specific, because you got to get that 12 cents in there. Anyway, so I was taking notes while you guys were speaking. So if you ask them, if you are asking people questions, is that truly persuasion? It's coming from them. So if you ask, if I asked you, well, okay, what's the worst case scenario if you didn't buy this product, or if you and I didn't work together, what would happen if nothing changed? How would that make, so we are bringing those pain points out. And just like when Alex started talking about lawyers usually know the answer to just about every question they ask in the courtroom. They are trying to persuade a jury that this person is guilty or innocent. They're only asking questions.
Yeah, Rona,
is that unethical?
I think that's, me personally, when you said that, I like got big hard eyes, because I think that's the key, is asking questions. So my mission statement, which I need to update because Elijah persuaded me that there is no such thing as altruism. That's for another day. But my mission statement, because I haven't changed it yet, is to create a more altruistic world through nonviolence and the Socratic method. And that's asking questions. And it brings up another point, which Alex was talking about too. And there are people that are cult deprogrammers. So first of all, when you're using the Socratic method, that's the most efficient way to come to as close as you can come to truth in the first place and define the terms and get at what's going on. But also it's effective because cult deprogrammers will tell them, hey, I could sit here and try to ethically or unethically persuade them all I want, but if I'm not asking the questions, they're not having the realization, the gears are not going off in their own head. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, Rona. Great point. Elijah,
Can I piggyback
go
on
ahead.
that?
Absolutely.
So I think I want to mildly disagree there. I think when you said that coaches are best, what's the word? Serve the purpose of being good listeners, right? So we're supposed to ask great questions to elicit them to respond so we can listen, right? So we're trying to, as coaches, right to ask questions so that they can talk themselves, lead them to the water so they can drink, right? However, this is I would say, a bit of a contested subject, in my opinion. My opinion is that the second you bring up a question, that's it. You brought up a subject. So now let me give you an example. And this is highly tied to ethical persuasion. If I've met someone for the first time, I've never ever spoken to them before. They're dressed in a particular way. The first question I ask is going to be formed by my opinion, right? That means I've already enforced my ethics on them. Let me break that down a little bit more, right? If I said to somebody who was, I don't know, drinking a beer, hey man, how many, again, I'm not saying anything, I'm not trying to impose my opinion, but according to your methodology, if I said, how many beers do you drink a week? Now, that could do one of two things, right? It might start thinking them shame, right? Because now you brought up a subject that, where did that come from? You forced your own ethics out of the blue by asking a question, in my opinion. So I think it's a very contested subject, when it comes to coaching and asking questions, because the very question you ask people is going to exert some kind of response, some whatever
You
it is,
bring up a
right?
great,
But
you bring up a great
makes
point.
a good coach, though.
Exactly.
Knowing what to ask.
Exactly. And the thing is, you have to, a good coach, and I can't speak for everybody, but you're not going to be asking those type of questions. You're going to start just getting to know the person. And that segues kind of into the next thing, which is, how do you persuade somebody, right? In the first place, Rona brought up, you have to be likable. And one of the things that they'll teach you in business school, or if you do any type of sales or customer facing thing, is building rapport, right? So I want to know, and then Deep, you brought up a great point too, which is you're going to judge somebody. And I'll throw this to Megan, and then Megan, if you could throw to Elijah, you're going to judge somebody by how they're dressed initially, right? And so that brings up a psychological phenomenon known as the halo effect, right? And you can use that to your benefit, right? So if somebody comes into a room, it could be a guy, it could be a girl, it could be a trans, and they're dressed to the nines, they're looking dapper, they're confident, they have their chest up, chin out, right? And they're being cordial, they're smiling, all that stuff. Psychologically, what that does to other people is it gets you to assume certain things about them that may or may not be true, right? So if I go in looking sharp and this and that, they're going to assume, oh, I went to Walgreens one day, right across the street from my house I was living at one time. I went in with the suit. Everyone was like, oh, hey, excuse me, sir. Let me get that door for you, Buck. Oh, hey, what can I help you find? Next day, I went in with a hoodie, and the guy started following me around the aisles, right? So the halo effect can make people have other assumptions about you. And just by dressing nice, having a smile, wearing some perfume, those are small things that you can do. Elijah, what do you think people can do?
Oh,
Sure.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, fun trivia. The opposite of the halo effect is the horns effect. Just so you know.
And
Anyway.
so just to pass it around, but let's start with Megan this time, and then she can throw to Elijah. But I want to know from real life coaches. And again, if you're just joining, like, share, and subscribe. This is dancingdragons.cc. This is our weekly live stream every Monday at 8:30 p.m. We've got some great episodes. We've interviewed some U.S. diplomats. We have a great show about how to ace an interview, which is based on persuasion. So we're kind of delving a little bit more into it. Dancingdragons.cc. And yeah, so I mean, what are some tips and tricks from this variety of life coaches that we have here? Persuasion, because I mean, we could talk about this all day, but yeah, Coach Megan, what are your thoughts on how to persuade somebody?
How to persuade someone, I feel like, is essentially being yourself and understanding who the other person is. So presenting yourself is selling yourself, and what you're selling is what you believe in. And so if you really believe in what you're selling and you understand where the other person is coming from, I feel like there's always going to be some common ground, because you can always agree to disagree. Like you said, being your best self, your optimal self. I feel like if you're always just prepared to have, the best moment of your life, or always prepared to stumble into something extraordinary, you're always just going to be prepared to encounter whatever comes ahead. And I feel like if you're always doing that, then you just become more likable, trustworthy. Because if you're being yourself, then I think people can see that. And then I think that when people see that, they feel comfortable in showing themselves to you as well. So I think it really just comes to humanity and knowing who you are and understanding what you're saying and seeing how that can affect someone else and seeing how that person believes the same things.
Yeah, and so commonality is important too. And then you bring up the research aspect too, right? So if you're working in sales, let's say you're working at a jewelry store, you want to have that knowledge. You want to have reputable sources. And if you don't know, you're going to be genuine, like you said, which is kind of the most important thing. I go in a men's warehouse every once in a while, and these guys are like breathing down my neck, and it's not genuine. It's creepy, and I get out of there. I don't shop there just because of that. So being genuine is the most important thing. But then also, like you said, actively listening and finding that commonality with somebody so you guys can both get on the same page. And then incredible, yes, you have to do your research, right? Because that's part of the thing is you want to project authority. You want to act like you know what's going on. But if you haven't done your research, then you're like, well, actually, I don't, who's going to want to buy from that? And again, lastly, you have to be humble. If you don't know somebody, people are going to appreciate, I don't know, let's find that out together, rather than being forced or lied to. But yeah, Rona, what's your take on that?
To Megan's point, yeah, I absolutely think you need to be yourself, and you have to mirror the person you're dealing with. When I was in advertising sales, I mean, you guys know me, I'm a little bit outgoing. Most of the buyers I dealt with were very quiet, very exact. I'm a high I, high D on the disc profile. I was dealing with a lot of C's and S's, very exacting, very, very quiet. They didn't make decisions quickly. And I learned through my sales experience to, number one, read the room, and number two, temper my enthusiasm. So I wasn't a bull in a china shop when I walked in, and became enough like them and knew what they were looking for to get them to like what I was offering. And then as they warmed up a little, I was able to bring out my wackiness, a little. So I think it's important to know your audience, know your client, know who you're speaking to. And if they're strangers, you have to know how to read body language, their vocal tonation. I mean, most conversation is nonverbal. You have to know, and especially if you're online. I do a lot of stuff online, and Dancing Dragons is all virtual. The coaches know how to read their clients. And it's not just leaning forward, leaning back. There's a lot of micro expressions that we have to look at in order to understand what direction to go in to give them our authentic, deep questions, or give them our authentic selves to make them trust us more.
Yeah, absolutely right. Elijah, what's your take on that? And that's something that you can learn from a great coach. And we're kind of just giving you the overviews and the tidbits, but there's so much going on. And like Rona just touched upon, if you're in a debate with somebody, if you sit back in your chair, that's communicating to your body, hey, I'm relaxed, and you're not as intense, right? But like she said, there's so many things going on at play, and it's just good to have knowledge about that so you can use them to your advantage, ethically, of course. Elijah, your take.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, look, the best way to be persuasive really depends on who you're dealing with. It depends on like a myriad of different things. Creating a personal relationship is definitely key. I actually have like a whole presentation I've done in the past. I kind of invented my own. I didn't really invent it. I stole a bunch of things and then like put together a collage of different theories about like the 5 steps of the conversation and how to like navigate your way through it through a sale. Right. And again, I would say everything's a sale. Right now, I'm in the 5 steps of the conversation. Right. I'm in the presentation, the 3rd step. Right. So, right. Like, so what I would say is like, I have that whole thing. I do have a couple of little things that are kind of fun little tidbits that the audience could take away. Like dealing with kids can be difficult. Right. It's really hard to persuade kids of things. I'll give you something that's like a lifesaver. This is the 2-option close, right? So I used to work with special needs children, little kids with autism, all different kinds of stuff, but it was mostly autistic kids, right? The 2-option close is a lifesaver when dealing with kids. All you do is you just give them 2 options for everything. You say like, oh, do you want to, you don't say like, hey, it's time to get ready for bed, you know, instead you say, do you want to wash your face first or brush your teeth first? And then they go, oh, I want to brush my teeth first, right? So they feel like they're participating, right? And this works everything. Like you can use a 2-option close with everybody in your life. You're giving people 2 options of things that you want both of those things, and people will just kind of like, people won't stray. Like it takes a very disagreeable person to be like, I don't want to do either of those things, right? So that's a cool little tidbit. What I did want to do is I want to come up with, all right, so this is something I used to do during sales. And I will admit it's on the line between unethical and ethical. I have no problem with it. So if you feel like I am a terrible person because of this, I don't know what to tell you. So this is what I used to do. And I want to get the panel's reaction from this, right? So I used to sell Verizon phone lines and internet to businesses, right? And I would cold call. I would just walk into your business, right? You're in the middle of helping out a customer, and I'm like, hey, my name's Elijah. Let's switch over those phone lines and internet to Verizon, right? It was a very aggressive sale, right? Very aggressive. They wouldn't expect me. I would just walk in. They'd see me with a clipboard and a suit and tie and be like, oh boy, here we go, right? And then I would just go, right? I've been hit. I've been spit at. I've had things thrown at me, right? It's all part of the job. All part of the job. Now, I did that for 3 years. Most people don't last 3 weeks. It's hard to find somebody who lasts 3 days. I did it for 3 years. So something that would happen though is a lot of business owners really neglect their phone and internet bills. They just kind of like, it's the last thing on their mind, right? You know, so like you'll get some outrage, like you'll look at a customer's bill, like if you can get them to give you like a competitor's bill, right? That's like a big part of the sale, right? And you'll see like they have like 2 phone lines in the internet for like $450 a month. And you're just like, oh my God, you know, like I can make this sale easy. I'm going to save this guy $300 a month. He's going to get faster internet. You know, you think it's like a grand slam home run, easiest sale of your life. You go and you present it, but you forget, I just walked in off the street. They don't know who I am. And then I tell you, I can save you $300 a month on your phone bill. All you have to do is sign this piece of paper. It's super sketchy, right? So what people will do is they'll say no, and then they'll call up Verizon and say, how much is 2 phone lines and internet? And then they'll be like, oh, it's this much. And then they'll just sign up with Verizon over the phone and I don't get commission, right? So it's really annoying, right? So what I start to do is lie to people. I would I would say we're only going to save you $20 a month. I wouldn't say we're saving you $300. I would increase the price. Now, some people that I worked with would give them more services that they didn't need so that it would come closer to their price. And then they would get paid higher commission. I found that to be unethical. Instead, what I did was I lied to them. I would tell them that their bill was going to be higher than it actually would be. They would agree to it. And then when they got their bill, they'll be like, how come it's $300 cheaper than I thought it was going to be? And I don't know, I was totally happy with that being the problem. So was that ethical or unethical persuasion?
Well, and that goes to the intention behind things. I want Megan to get to because she looks like she has an idea. What are your thoughts on that?
It kind of reminds me of the under deliver or over. What is it?
Promise, under deliver.
It's the other way.
Under promise, over deliver.
deliver.
So it's better what you were doing. Like you were saying less, but then they were given more later. So I think that's ethical, but at the same time, it's
under promise, over
always,
deliver. Is that the term? Yeah.
Yeah, but I was clearly lying.
Okay, so we're gonna.
but in the end, you like save them.
But you weren't. You were saving them 20 at least.
That's true.
So it's degree.
The fact that you're still having the fact that you're having this moral dilemma right now is.
Oh, I'm not having a moral dilemma. I just thought it was a good conversation starter. I am 100% okay with this.
Then that brings me to the point. Then it's all right. So when you, all right, please forgive me for my candidness here, right?
Yeah.
When you were talking, because funny enough, I was selling phone books in Edinburgh once, and I had to. The thing I learned is that I can't lie to people. I can't look at people and lie. Whether if someone says to me, listen, even if it's like a little trivial thing, right? I learned as a young age to like read people's eyes, and when someone lies, I can quickly tell the flicker, right? So I've saved myself so much trouble, so much worry, and I think the reason why I've been able to do so much in my life and learn so much from fuck ups is because I'm brutally honest, which means that like I don't think, and the reason why I'm not doing always great in sales, as I am in sales as well, is because I always tell that I can't lie, which means that it is a subjective thing, right? So now I also understand, like, something that my mother always used to say, that sometimes telling a lie that's going to save someone's life is not a lie, right? But I'm always telling her, well, you know what, if you start doing that, next thing you know, we'll have a president who's doing things and getting away with it. So we have to hold truth to such a high account that if you have to lie, just look down and do it, man.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you, and everyone's going to have a different answer. And maybe at the end, once we wrap this up, we can ask everybody what they would do with the train dilemma, because everyone, like you pointed out, Deep, everyone has a different opinion. I agree with you on this one personally, Deep. I think it's better to just be very open and forward with people, because I think that's what resonates with people best. And before we throw it over to Alex, I mean, this is just one example of persuasion, right? So you could go up and say, what if I started this video and I was like, hey guys, I would like to talk to you about time management. You'd be like, okay, loser, shut up. And why are you wearing a turtleneck? You look weird. But if I said, hey, what if I told you there is a way that you could gain back an extra 10 hours a week of your life without cutting back on sleeping? Which is more persuasive to you, right? So these are just, this comes down to framing, and then also things like Rona was talking about, your cadence, your tonality, and how you use your rhetoric. But yeah, Alex, thank you for your patience yet again. Your thoughts on this, the ethics, and then also too, tips on persuasion.
I don't have to speak for long. This section, I was going to go back and talk about a couple things. I have them on my list, but come back to me in a minute. I'm actually just listening.
Sure. I'm going to list off a couple things and we'll come back to you. But so what I think you need to do is I pretty much agree with everything everyone said so far. Maybe Elijah, maybe saying, I don't know. But at the end of the day, right, the things where we disagree really comes down to the ethical thing. And like Dee pointed out, these things are subjective, right? And we talked about, do the ends justify the means, utilitarianism, Machiavellianism. But at the end of the day, you always want to learn how to build that rapport, right? And like Elijah said, right, people are going to talk, and you have an idea you want to convey to people, right? But you listen, you actively listen, like Rona talked about, and you have the empathy, like Deep said. And then you're like, okay, so this person is interested in healthcare, or okay, this person is interested in art. And then you will frame your conversation and your persuasion around that. So it's very effective. And then also, like I said, go ahead. Yes, please go.
Yeah, I remember what I was going to say. So So basically, Elijah can talk about effective sales as opposed to ethical sales, and then we can figure out where they overlap, right? But those who've done sales formally, I think sales is great training for life. They do all sorts of studies. Like, I don't know, statistics are always BS, but something like half the billionaires, their first job was sales, whatever, sales is a very good skill set. And you can definitely go into unethical areas. But if we want it to be effective, I think you want to build up trust. People, and you want to build up likability. So when you're talking about a coach and a client pair at Dancing Dragons, right? We're talking about a pair of people that trust each other. And why do they trust each other? It's because they share a stake in each other's future, right? They have a shared stake in the outcome. They have a reoccurring meeting. So the fact that the coach is interested in creating a bond and a trust bond because they want what's best for the client, and vice versa. The client wants to help themselves. So they both want the best for each other. And it's that shared stake that creates trust, and trust lubricates the transactions, lubricates the transaction, right? So anyway, yeah, trust is really important word. I think we should dive into, and being genuine is showing genuine interest in someone's well-being and the outcome of their life. And I think it's trust is a result of a shared stake. So you're having a shared stake in each other's lives. So anyway, that's my take on you can be more effective if you're genuine. You can be more genuine if there's trust, and trust is a result of a shared outcome, a shared stake in the outcome.
And Elijah, I'll throw to you, but Alex and Deep brought up great points, right? Because you have to think about every situation is different, as Elijah points out, but you don't I don't think you should lie, because if you lie, and now the way he said it's not just a straight up lie, right? So it's obviously more nuanced than that. But as a general thing, you obviously don't want to lie just to make the sale, because if you do, they might return it, and they're definitely going to not come back and be like, oh, I'm going to keep buying from this guy again, right? So Elijah, your retort to that, and then also what you wanted to say.
So first off, I want to go around and actually get like a yes or no answer, right? Because or at least get Rona's take. So I'm not sure what everybody's take was. I'm pretty sure Hardeep was like, that was unethical. I think that you tentatively agreed with him, Will. So you're saying it's unethical to lie about the thing. Alex, what do you say about my situation? Is it is what I did unethical or ethical?
Sorry, does that mean, so what you did, which is to artificially raise the price?
Yeah, I would lie to them and tell them that the price would be higher so that they would buy it.
I would deem it ethical, but you might get fired by your company, right? So it's like,
no, I told everybody about it. In fact, they had me teach people it.
So I'm very on ethics. I'm extremely subjective. I don't believe in objective ethics. I just don't. I think literally philosophers can prove that objective ethics is impossible. Now, believers in a higher power and higher order could claim objective ethics, but it's still subjective.
They cannot.
I'll get with you, Alex. I'll get with you, Alex, about this philosophy. I'm going to turn you on to my boy Kant.
So
anyway.
I would say you are acting ethically. It depends on which vantage point. It depends on the perspective.
By the way, Kant would say it's never ethical to lie. Megan, what would you say?
I feel like it's gray and complicated, because I feel like you shouldn't lie, but at the same time, what you did kind of helps them in the end. So I feel like if someone is sure about how they're going about something with their best interest in heart, or the person or idea's best interest in heart, I feel like there are different ways you can go about it. And then obviously reading the room, depending on the person, seeing if that's the best way to do something versus another way. Like, I feel like it's more complicated than it being ethical or not ethical.
Rona?
Okay. I'm taking notes here. From all my years, there is such a thing as perceived value. If you go in with a value that is so much different and so much lower, they will not believe it, which is why they had to call. So everybody wants a deal, right?
Mhm.
If you go in with a small deal, so back to your point about framing, Will, it's how you frame it. So you went in saying, look, I can save you $20. They will listen because, all right, every little bit counts. And then all of a sudden it's a lot less. Holy crap, how did that happen? And then I guess I'm saving you more than I thought. By doing it in stages, you've convinced them it's the same price, and you framed it in such a way where they think they've discovered a secret and they're happy with it, and then they're going to buy it. So, no, I don't think it's unethical.
All right.
As a black and white, no, I don't think it's
You
unethical.
really got me there. That was
this-
great. Yeah, she said,
and this
no, I don't think it's unethical. That
I
was
don't
good.
think, because I would have probably.
I thought you were
done
saying, no,
something
it's not ethical. That's why I like this to switch up. It was
Yeah.
good. It was like from American Idol. It was like one of those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I make an
go ahead,
inference
Pete.
then? Can I
Yeah,
make
please
an
do.
inference from the
Go ahead, Pete.
statement? So this is the, correct me if I'm wrong, the objective truths that I've listened to is I lied to persuade the person. So by the standard of what I've heard, can I ask you guys a question? Are you saying, or would you agree by the statements that you've made that lying is ethical?
So that's a great question. So what I was going to suggest is I will give a bigger answer as to why I feel like what I did was ethical, and then get your feedback on it. Right. So first off, I don't agree. I'm a deontologist all the way, and I definitely think that there is objective ethics. But and my boy Kant, Immanuel Kant, like he's my boy. He was very wrong about lying, though, right? He thought it was never okay to lie, right? He wasn't right about everything, but deontology he got right. So, but the point is that it's the reason why it's okay for me. Again, I'll try to ethically persuade you right now why it's okay to lie in this situation. It's because if they found out I was lying, I wouldn't care at all. Like, in fact, I would wish that they would find out I was lying, because then they would know I'm legit, right? Like, the problem I'm solving here is not the problem of like persuasion as much, but it's a problem of my own credibility. And so what I was doing was, if they had found out I was lying, if they were like, hey, you're inflating the price, why are you telling me it's more expensive? And I'll be like, well, because when I tell people it's so cheap, they just don't believe it, and so they say no. I would be totally okay with that conversation. There's no embarrassment. There's no like, oh my God, I did this wrong. There's no guilt there, right, at all. Right. So that's why I believe it's ethical. Now, I don't think that you owe everybody the truth. I don't think it's ethical. Like, so for instance, if I was using the bathroom or something and somebody called me up and they're like, what are you doing? I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm using the bathroom. Right. And I think most people would thank me for that, just because it's just not something that you want like to share. Right. I'll just be like, oh, I'm watching TV or something, something like that. But the point is that there's like different things that, you can lie about. Now, the famous example to debunk Immanuel Kant's "it's never okay to lie" thing is like, if Nazis are at your door and they're asking you if you know where Jews are, and you do know where Jews are, if you tell them Rona's in the lower right-hand corner, right? It's bad,
Yeah, totally agree. And go ahead, Elijah.
But anyway, so now that I've explained my mentality, so I think I was the first one on here to attach the ethics with honesty, right? I said you've got to be open and honest, right? And so I think this is more an openness, where it's like, if they found out I was lying, I'm totally okay with that. And I think that's why it's ethical.
Well,
Elijah,
go ahead,
when I
Rhoda.
was selling TV, we had tiers. So we had like when I was selling political ads, they bought it at top dollar. Then we had other advertisers who bought it at a lesser amount, or maybe it was a larger rotation. Does that make me a liar? It was just the way we sold it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
maybe
and-
that's my headspace to why I don't think, because you did save them money. You were not lying about saving them money. If you
I would-
eventually,
I-
told so.
I would just say, hey, look, you're not going to believe. Look, you're gonna go. You're gonna predict what they're gonna do, and you're not gonna believe that I could actually save you this money. But here, let me take my pad and my calculator out, and look, I can actually do this. Right? You can call my boss, whatever. I would prefer to approach that like that. We're obviously not going to come to an agreement on ethics tonight, for sure. But this is something that we should discuss at a further date, because it's something that corporations, our friends and family, the government does every single day. Maybe you've been at a big building and it says, hey, do you know you could save 25, you could eliminate 25 calories if you took the stairs instead of taking the elevator. You see that everywhere. And this is like the new thing. We're, like I said at the beginning of this, you wake up, you're being influenced by ads on your phone, on the TV, the radio, just driving by. Everyone's trying to persuade you. And we've come to more than an hour now, but I'd like to go across the panel and get any other tips or tricks to persuade people, whether ethically or not. And also, what are some ways that you can go about protecting yourself from unethical, or at least just, I think one of the best ways to do it is just being aware, right? That's the first step, is like, okay, let's be aware of the different ways of persuasion. Alex, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's ethical to lie in some cases. I don't believe in objective ethics anyway, so it wouldn't be right or wrong. There's no such thing in my opinion. But it's whether you want, it's like sort of a survival mechanism. And I guess your question, you want to know about, like, the answer to Elijah's question was it's fine. Now, according to his company, it may or may not be fine. You know, he might have a colleague that doesn't like the unfair competition. The colleague reports him, and then he gets fired, not because he did something wrong or unethical, but just because it's not policy, you know. I mean, I'd like to frame it in Dancing Dragons terms. But I do think that if you have someone's best interests at heart, that's the major question. You could, for example, you could be absolutely thinking that you're not lying. You could believe that you have the best intention at heart. And we call that negligence, typically, when you thought you were doing the right thing, but you were misinformed. And so you had no intention of lying. You had no intention of harming someone, yet you still did. And in that category of the law, we'd call that negligence. So there's a lot of ways to do things the wrong way, you know, in life. It's easier to do things poorly than it is to do things well. That's like chaos versus order. The kind of second law of thermodynamics kicks in pretty hard on that stuff. So I think as a company, we want, the whole purpose of human connection in life is to create order from chaos. Our favorite conservative philosopher, Jordan Peterson, will probably talk about that a lot. But we exist as a species to create order. Life itself is order in a sea of chaos. And to coach somebody is to create more order in their life so that they can achieve goals. So whatever leads to like more order, but not too much order, because too much order becomes too rigid and you get some sort of authoritarian system in place that you can't break free out of. So I would say you might want to lie if you're lying to an authoritarian thing that doesn't serve your needs, right? So I'm pretty subjective on this. Of course, I'm running a company. It wouldn't be prudent to admit to too much flagrancy when it comes to lying and truthiness.
True.
But I do believe there's any philosopher claiming some sort of objective ethics has lost their mind and is subject to their own self-deception. But anyway, I don't know if I answered your question, but I'm happy to ramble about this stuff.
No, yeah, and I want to say before we go to Rona, and we're doing this with the best interest in mind. And I say every week, and I'm going to continue to say every week, if you break your leg, you're going to go see the doctor. If you get in trouble with the law, you're going to go see a lawyer. and you only have one life that we know about right now, allegedly. And you want to make the best of that. And there are so many people that are not where they want to be. And like Alex said too, it's like when you're not doing it's easy to coast by. It's easy to just chill. And then you wake up and then there's a week and then there's a 2 weeks and then there's a month and then man. So get on your P's and Q's. Go check out dancingdragons.cc. Saying something 3 times helps you remember something. That's an ethical persuasion hack, right? But also be aware of it. Some people could just say something that's false all the time, right? And but yes, you can actually go to dancingdragons.cc. Don't believe me? Fact check me right now. dancingdragons.cc. Check us out. Yeah. Any final thoughts, Rona? And then also, how would you defend yourself against some unethical persuasion?
Well, I think that there is a lot of gray area in the sense of who and what and is involved. Is it a B2B? Is it a B2C? Is it a person to person? Is it a service? Is it an object? If I am selling my services, or if I'm persuading someone to work with me by asking questions, I'm not going to be unethical. I'm not going to lie about what I know, who I am, what my wheelhouse is, because I'm going to suck at it, and they'll never use me again. And why would I want to do that? So in that sense, selling myself, I have to know myself enough to know what I can and can't do for the other person. When I was in advertising, yes, I was selling to people. So I'm not going to screw them over because I wanted them to work with my station again. And at the same time, I wanted a bigger share of the pie that came from corporate. It wasn't out of their pocket. So it did affect how they made decisions.
Yeah.
So that's my story.
And Deep, go ahead on this one. And man, stay tuned next week.
I am never going to sell Deep anything ever.
Dude.
Ever.
Well, I thought I'd share something from my sales life, which is most of the time. The thing that I try to uncover in order to persuade is the needs, right? So that's the transaction, uncovering the needs, right, through various techniques, listening, asking questions, and then commodifying those needs, right? So that's what the sales transaction is. Once, as a coach or as a salesperson, as a friend, whatever, partner, I'm trying to find out I'm trying to uncover what is the need. What does this person need? What does this company need? What does this problem need? What does this project need, right? Once we've uncovered that need, then I can persuade my thing, my solution, my idea on how I can fulfill that need. And then we find an agreed transaction statement or whatever money that fulfills the two things. So I think for me, if I was to construct, I don't want to use the word lying, or that's kind of like, I don't know. I would rather say that if I can find the need, and you guys can use truth, subjective truth, whatever you want to use, but I think if we can use that word need, then we can persuade, right? So uncovering the needs of the person, and then trying to fulfill that need. Now that can be done whether if it's lying or not lying, or whatever your techniques are, whatever your moral ethical standards are, that's on you. But I think in terms of this collective, or the work that we're trying to do, or the information that we're trying to impart on people, is that through uncovering needs, we can then figure out what needs to be persuaded, right? And I'm going to shut up now.
No, yeah, I'm everybody's bringing up some really great points here, and let's go to Elijah. Sorry, Megan. Then we'll go to Elijah, and then I'll get a couple of final points there. And that's why I'm really glad that we were able to get such a diverse panel today with a whole bunch of different backgrounds, and that kind of showcases the diversity of the coaches that we have as well too. And it's awesome because you're able to get for free a whole bunch of different perspectives. Unfortunately, we're already over an hour, but there's a whole bunch of things that we didn't get into. So go check out dancingdragons.cc, because I mean, we can give you little tidbits here and there, but only a life coach can give you a personal, tailor-made plan for yourself working with you. We can only give you tips and tricks here. Coach Megan, your thoughts, final thoughts.
I have a lot I can say, but what was the question? Or what are we?
Just any final thoughts, and then if you wanted
How-
to comment on, go ahead.
How would
Go
you
ahead,
defend yourself against unethical persuasion?
Being aware of what you believe is right, being aware of where the other person may be coming from, understanding what you believe is accurate, but also keeping in mind that things can come and look differently. So I feel like awareness is a big part, and understanding who you are and who the other person is. It's really just kind of like how you live life. Like, you are trying to defend yourself, but live your best life. And other people can help you or hurt you, but generally you're prepared for either. And we can keep learning from that. And then that's why Dancing Dragons is so important, because that's really what we work on, like trying to help you help yourself, allowing yourself to come home to who you are, unearthing what you already know. We're not telling you what to do, but we're helping you understand who you already are.
Yeah, and then making the best of yourself too, and then Think and Grow Rich, the book to Deep's point and Alex's point, Think and Grow Rich. That book tells you to write down your goals, right, and say what you want, but you also have to say what you're going to give in return, right? Because people want something in return too, and like Elijah was saying, like, don't assume maybe I don't want a hot red leather couch, but people do, right? So just share that confidence. Elijah, any final thoughts on this topic, my friend?
Yeah, a couple. So you said like how to defend yourself. I would say, maybe I'll use an old Stone Cold Steve Austin reference and say, don't trust anyone. No, that's terrible advice. Nobody wants to live that way.
It's not.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. So
great advice.
here's the updated based version of that. Trust, but verify. Right. So you don't want to live your life without trust. You're going to live a very cold, dark, lonely life if you don't trust anybody. But trust, but verify. That's absolutely key. Now, what I would say is when it comes to like ethical persuasion, I liked what Deep was talking about there. He was talking about selling on benefits, right? Persuading people based off of benefits. Even when you use your thing about saving time, right? You were giving the benefits, like you'll get 10 hours more a week, right? That's the benefit, right? So, quick little story is I was at a seminar where somebody was talking about teaching this kind of stuff to your kids and like how to teach your kids how to negotiate in sales and stuff like that, right? I genuinely believe that teaching your kid how to negotiate is one of the most important things that you could teach your child. But he was talking about how he had really done this at like his daughter's whole life. And she was like 12 years old and she was a tennis player. And one day she comes up to him and she's like, hey, you need to buy airplane tickets to Australia so we can go see Venus and Serena play teams at like the World Championship or something like that. I don't know what it was, right? I don't watch tennis. But and he was like, yeah, there's zero chance that's going to happen. So, and then his daughter was like, she was like upset. She was like, oh, come on. She did the normal kid stuff. Like, oh, come on, please. And he's like, no, I'm not buying tickets to Australia, okay, to go watch a tennis match. That's crazy. So then she came back like an hour later and she was like, listen, I've been thinking. And she was like, and here's why you should do it. Because think about the time that we will have together. It'll be a once in a lifetime experience for us. And Venus and Serena almost never team up. And this might be the last time. They're both getting older in their careers. They might never team up again. We might see this for the last time. And it's going to be the only opportunity in my whole life I get to see them together. And then he was like, fine. And so he bought the tickets. They went to Australia. They saw it. And he was like, and I will tell you, she was absolutely right. That's literally my favorite memory of my whole life, was watching her watch Serena and Venus play tennis. He was like, she was just so into it. We had such a great time. I'm so happy she convinced me to do that. Right. So sell on benefits. Right. That's my biggest takeaway. And that's a good way. Ethical persuasion. She conned her dad out of probably tens of thousands of dollars to his benefit. So there you go.
Yeah, and so that's the thing is, I want to end it off on that. And guys, awesome points, and it's unfortunate that we only have. I mean, we went well over an hour today. It's an hour and 20 minutes because, like Alex said, we could talk about this for 4 days, and it is interesting, and there's a lot to be known there. I would say just to kind of wrap things up, you know, just remind yourself that someone's trying to persuade you all the time. It could be a corporation trying to persuade you to eat some terrible food, or it could be your buddy saying, "Hey, come on, man, you're getting old. Let's take this vacation," right? So you want to weigh everything, right? And you have to understand to keep in the back of your mind, everyone's trying to persuade you at all times. And like Elijah said, and Rona said, use a Socratic method. Keep an open but skeptical mind. You want to be open, but you also want to, follow up on things too. Don't just, I believe Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's what we're going to end up on. Don't trust anybody, right? Now you can trust somebody after years of somebody saying, oh, being there for you or being a fan. But even still then too, if they be like, hey, Will, I just saw Bigfoot. Okay, we're going to have to run that back. All right. So, and I don't want to alienate the Bigfoot believers out there, but yeah, just remember that you're being persuaded every day, and a life coach at Dancing Dragons can help you be the most persuasive version of yourself. And then also we have a ton of other coaches, right? Maybe health or wellness is your thing. Maybe you want to advance in your field. Maybe you want to benefit with dating. Maybe you're somebody that is just looking to grow personally, right? So there's a million things, and everybody is unique, and that's what we're doing here at dancingdragons.cc, dancingdragons.cc, dancingdragons.cc. We're going to be here live again next Monday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, with another spicy topic. Who knows? Maybe it'll be just ethics, right? The ethics of being a life coach. I don't know. Maybe we'll rant and rave about that. But we will be back. I appreciate everybody for watching. Do us a favor before you go. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell to get notifications, just in case you forget. And whatever social media you're watching us on, like, share, and subscribe. Send this to a friend, because we are doing this for the right reasons. We want to see people be the best versions of themselves, and we want something in return for that too, right? So, guys, thank you very much, and we will see you next week.
Oh, and by the way, for the Bigfoot non-believers, all right, just understand that the reason why the pictures are always blurry is because he is blurry. We have a big blurry monster.
Is blurry.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
We have a big blurry monster wandering the countryside. All right, everybody, be excellent to each other. That's a Mitch Hedberg joke. But anyway, that's a Mitch Hedberg joke.
Thanks, guys.
All right, adios.
Thanks.
Bye.